Hey friends! If you're excited to watch the 2024 blockbuster Deadpool and Wolverine in full HD, make sure to hit that like button right now. And if you're new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update. In today's video, we'll be talking all about the much-awaited film Deadpool and Wolverine, from where and how you can officially watch it, to all the behind-the-scenes details. We'll cover everything, including pre-production, post-production, filming locations, the movie's budget, and its box office performance. Plus, we'll bring you an in-depth review of the film, breaking down the entire storyline and giving our thoughts on the cast and their performances. We'll also explore the music and technical departments that brought this movie to life. So stay tuned, because this video is packed with interesting and entertaining content you won't want to miss. Watch till the end, and if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So, let's start the video. Deadpool and Wolverine is a 2024 American superhero film based on Marvel Comics featuring the characters Deadpool and Wolverine. Produced by Marvel Studios, Maximum Effort, and 21 Laps Entertainment, and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. It is the 34th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe (MCU) and the sequel to Deadpool 2016 and Deadpool 2 2018. The film was directed by Sean Levy from a screenplay. He wrote with Ryan Reynolds, Rhett Reese, Paul Werner-Nick, and Zeb Wells. Reynolds and Hugh Jackman respectively star as Wade Wilson/Deadpool and Logan/Wolverine alongside Emma Corrin, Morena Baccarin, Rob Delaney, Lizzie Uggams, Aaron Stanford, and Matthew McFadyen. In the film, Deadpool works with a reluctant Wolverine from another universe to stop the Time Variance Authority, TVA, from destroying his own universe. Development on a third Deadpool film began at 20th Century Fox by November 2016, but was moved to Marvel Studios when Fox was acquired by Disney in March 2019. Wendy Malinu and Lizzie Malin-Logallen joined in November 2020 as writers. Levy was hired to direct in March 2022 when and Werner-Nick returned from the previous films for rewrites. The creative team had difficulty settling on a story until Jackman decided to reprise his role as Wolverine from Fox's X-Men film series in August 2022. Several other actors from the X-Men films and other Marvel productions also returned as part of a multiverse story, which serves as a tribute to Fox's Marvel films. Filming began in May 2023, taking place at Pinewood Studios, Bovington Studios, and Norfolk in England, as well as Los Angeles. Production was suspended in July due to the 2023 SAG-AFT strike. Filming resumed in November and wrapped in January 2024. The title was revealed a month later. The film's soundtrack features an original score by Rob Simpson and numerous existing songs, including Madonna's Like a Prayer, 4 key sequences. Deadpool and Wolverine is the first R-rated MCU film, retaining that rating from the prior Deadpool films. Deadpool and Wolverine premiered on July 22, 2024 at the David H. Koch Theater in New York City and was released in the United States on July 26 as part of Phase 5 of the MCU. Critics praised the performances of Reynolds and Jackman as well as the humor, but were less positive about the film overall. It grossed $1.338 billion worldwide, becoming the second highest grossing film of 2024, the highest grossing R-rated film ever, and the 20th highest grossing film ever at the time of its release. The film received various accolades. Movie plot. In 2018, Wade Wilson uses Cable's time travel device to prevent the death of his girlfriend Vanessa Carlo. He then travels from his universe Earth 10005 to Earth 616, also called the Sacred Timeline, hoping to join that reality's Avengers. He is rejected by Happy Hogan and returns to his own universe. 6 years later, Wade has broken up with Vanessa, retired from being the masked mercenary Deadpool, and works as a used car salesman with his friend and former X-Force member, Peter Wisdom. During Wade's birthday party, he is detained by the Time Variance Authority, TVA, and brought to Mr. Paradox, who explains that they are an organization outside of time that monitors the sacred timeline and the wider multiverse. He offers Wade a future on the sacred timeline, which Wade accepts until Paradox reveals that Wade's universe is deteriorating as a result of the death of its stabilizing anchor being Logan. See, Paradox plans to use a Time Ripper device to accelerate this process. Wade steals Paradox's Tempad device and uses it to travel to Logan's grave, hoping to resurrect him and save their timeline. When this fails, Wade travels the multiverse searching for a replacement variant of Logan. Wade returns to the TVA with a variant of Logan. Paradox says an anchor being cannot be replaced, especially by this variant who is considered to be the worst Wolverine in the multiverse. When Wade deduces that Paradox is acting without the knowledge of his superiors, Paradox sends Wade and Logan to the Void, a wasteland at the end of time. Wade claims the TVA can change events in Logan's past, convincing him to work together to escape the Void. The pair are captured alongside Johnny Storm and taken to Cassandra Nova, the powerful and sadistic twin sister of X-Men leader Charles Xavier. Cassandra, who made a deal with the TVA to oversee the Void, kills Johnny and leaves Wade and Logan to be consumed by the creature Alio, but the pair escape. Logan and Wade meet Deadpool variants, Nicepool and Dogpool, who direct them towards a resistance group that has been fighting Cassandra. Wade accidentally admits that he is not certain whether the TVA can change Logan's timeline, and the pair fight until they are both unconscious. They are found by the resistance group consisting of Laura, Elektra, Blade, and Gambit. Wade proposes an alliance and Laura convinces Logan, regretful of his past actions which led to the deaths of his fellow X-Men, to join the Resistance. Members distract Cassandra's henchmen while Wade and Logan block her powers using Juggernaut's helmet. Cassandra is betrayed by her follower Pyro on behalf of Paradox and almost dies until Logan convinces Wade to remove the helmet. Cassandra heals herself and uses a sling ring to open a portal to Earth 100,005. For Logan and Wade, Cassandra learns about the Time Ripper from Pyro, kills him, and follows Logan and Wade to Earth 10005. She plans to use the Time Ripper to destroy all timelines, leaving only the Void. Cassandra summons an army of Deadpool variants who kill Nicepool and battle Wade and Logan until Peter arrives to distract them. Paradox tells Wade and Logan that one of them could destroy the Time Ripper by disrupting its power flow, but this would kill them. Wade and Logan destroy the Time Ripper together, killing Cassandra in the process, and survive by sharing the burden. Paradox is arrested by the TVA's Hunter B-15, who congratulates Wade and Logan and says their actions have stopped Earth 10005 from deteriorating. Wade asks Hunter B-15 to save the resistance group from the Void and change the history of Logan's world. She explains that the latter is not possible because Logan's history is what led to him being a hero now, but allows Logan to stay in Wade's universe. During a gathering with Wade's friends, that includes Dogpool and a rescued Laura, Logan encourages Wade to reconcile with Vanessa, a wisecracking mercenary from Earth 10005 with accelerated healing but severe scarring over his body after undergoing an experimental regenerative mutation to treat terminal cancer. Begins the film retired from being Deadpool, no longer dating Vanessa Carroll and working as a used car salesman. Writer Rhett Ree described Deadpool as a fish out of water in the film, a lunatic dropped into the sane world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe (MCU). Though Reynolds said the audience did not have to take Deadpool seriously, particularly with his fourth wall-breaking and unreliable narration, he wanted them to be invested in the other characters. Deadpool's opening dance number was performed by Nick P.Y., who is credited as Dancepool. Reynolds also portrays the alternate universe variant, Nicepool, who has no scars or healing factor, for which he is credited as Gordon Reynolds. Hugh Jackman as Logan/Wolverine, a mutant and former member of the X-Men, with healing abilities, retractable claws, and an adamantium-infused skeleton. This Wolverine is a variant from a universe that he let down, and the pairing with Deadpool allowed Jackman to explore new aspects of the character from his appearances as a different version of Wolverine in 20th Century Fox's X-Men film series. Jackman said Logan and Wade are opposites and have a quarreling dynamic, while director Sean Levy said their relationship is affected by both characters being haunted with regret. They chose to depict the characters' backstory, including the deaths of his fellow X-Men, through sound design, only to keep the focus on Wolverine's regrets, rather than on the appearances of other characters. To prepare for the role, Jackman began a vigorous workout routine that included eating up to 8,000 calories a day. Jackman also portrays several other Wolverine variants, one possessing the character's comic book accurate height of 5 feet 3 inches in 160 centimeters with actor Luke Bennett serving as body double Wolverine's gambling alter ego Patch, who wears an eye patch and white tuxedo, an Old Man Logan variant, a variant being crucified on a giant X. Inspired by the cover of Uncanny X-Men number 251 July 1989, a variant wearing a brown costume who fights the Hulk, referencing the cover of the Incredible Hulk number 340. October 1987, and an Age of Apocalypse 1995 variant with glam rock hair, one hand and a black and red costume. Emma Corrin as Cassandra Nova, a mutant with telekinetic and telepathic powers who is the twin sister of Charles Xavier. She rules over the Void, a wasteland at the end of time. Having not played many villains before, Corrin was excited to take on the role and was inspired by Christoph Waltz's character Hans Landa from the film Inglourious Bastard 2009. Reynolds and Levy explained Cassandra to Corrin as someone who would endear others to the point that you are going to be best friends for life, only to realize she could easily kill them. Corrin was interested in having a physical transformation for the role but was told by the studio that this was not required for the character. Corrin also wanted to pay homage to Patrick Stewart and James McAvoy's performances as Xavier in previous X-Men films and to be faithful to Cassandra's relationship with Xavier in the comics. Marina Baccarin as Vanessa Carroll, Wade's former fiancée. Baccarin noted that she has a smaller role compared to the previous Deadpool films. Rob Delaney as Peter Wisdom, a member of WDE's X-Force team who works with him at the car dealership. Peter encourages Wade to return to his life as Deadpool. Lizzie Uggams as Blind Al, WDE's blind elderly roommate. Aaron Stanford as John Allardyce/Pyro, a pyrokinetic mutant working for Cassandra. Stanford wears a more comics-accurate costume than he did in Fox's X-Men films. Matthew McFadyen as Mr. Paradox, an agent of the Time Variance Authority, TVA, an organization outside of time and space that monitors the multiverse. Paradox plans to speed up the death of Earth 10005 with a Time Ripper machine. McFadyen said the character was untrustworthy, but not a villain, though he thought Paradox would prefer to be a supervillain or superhero rather than being stuck doing a mundane thing of monitoring the timelines in the multiverse. Also reprising their roles from the previous Deadpool films are Karen Sony as Dopinder, a taxi driver and admirer of Wade, Brianna Hildebrand as Negonic Teenage Warhead, a teenage member of the X-Men with a mutant power to detonate atomic bursts from her body. Shioli Katsuna as Yukio, Nega Teenage Warhead's girlfriend and fellow X-Men member. Stefan Kapizik as the voice of X-Men member Pod Rasputin/C. Colossus. Randall Rear as Buck, a friend of Wade from his mercenary days, and Louis Tan as Rusty/Shatterstar, a member of X-Force, returning from other Marvel properties are Tyler Mine as Victor Creed/Sabretooth from X-Men 2000, Daphne Keane as Laura/X-23, a female clone of Logan from Logan 2017. Jennifer Garner as Electronacios, a skilled fighter who uses a pair of psi weapons from Daredevil 2003 and Elektra 2005. Wesley Snipes as the half-vampire Day Walker Eric Brooks/Blade from New Line Cinema's Blade film trilogy 1998 to 2004 and Chris Evans as Johnny Storm/Human Torch, a member of the Fantastic Four who can engulf himself in and control fire and fly from Tim Story's Fantastic Four duology 2005 to 2007. Jon Favreau reprises his MCU role of Harold Happy Hogan, while one Mimi Mozaka returns as TVA member Hunter B-15 from the MCU television series Loki 2021 to 2023. Additionally, Channing Tatum appears as Remy Labau/Gambit, the character he was attached to portray in an unproduced Gambit film. New actors playing characters from previous Marvel films include Aaron W. Reed as Kane Marco/Juggernaut, Mike Waters as Fred Duke/Blob Tin, and the uncredited Billy Clemens as the Russian, Aisha Hussein as Psylocke, Chloe Kibble as Callisto, Jade Lai as Lady Deathstrike, Eduardo Gago Munoz as Azizel, Daniel Medina Ramos as Toad, and Curtis Small as Bullseye. Actors playing Deadpool variants include Peggy, a dog actor, as Mary Pupin/Dogpool, Reynolds' wife Blake Lively as the voice of Lady Pool, who was physically portrayed by stuntwoman Christian Bettridge. Two of Reynolds and Lively's children, Inns and Olin, as the voices of Kid Pool and Baby Pool, respectively. Nathan Fillion as the voice of Head Pool, a floating severed head. Matthew McConaughey as the voice of Cowboy Pool. Wrexham AFC player Paul Mullen as Welsh Pool. Reynolds' stunt double Alex Kishkovich as Canada, Harry Holland, brother of Tom Holland, who portrays Peter Parker/Spider-Man in the MCU as Harold Poole. Kevin Foran as the Grey Hood Zen Pool, and Hung Dante Dong as What/Ronan Pole. Other Deadpool variants include the futuristic Deadpool 2099, Wheezy Wilson/G Golden Age Deadpool, whose suit features a gas mask, Iron Deadpool, a cross between Deadpool and Iron Man, and one inspired by Jackman's role as P.T. Barnum in The Greatest Showman 2017. Other cameo appearances include Henry Cavill as a Wolverine variant dubbed the Cavaline, Wrexham AFC player Ollie Palmer as a bar patron, and Greg Hemphill as a bartender. Chris Hemsworth appears as Thor through repurposed archival footage from the MCU film Thor: The Dark World 2013 production. After the success of Deadpool 2016, 20th Century Fox began developing two sequels. The third film was set to include the superhero team X-Force. Deadpool director Tim Miller chose not to return for the sequels due to creative differences, with star Ryan Reynolds, and David Leitch was hired to direct Deadpool 2 2018. In November 2016, Fox was looking for another filmmaker to develop the third film. In March 2017, Deadpool and Deadpool 2 co-writer Rhett Reset X-Force would be introduced in Deadpool 2 before starring in a planned spin-off film that would launch something bigger, separate from the third Deadpool film, which would be more personal. When the acquisition of 21st Century Fox by Disney was announced in December 2017, the Walt Disney Company's CEO Bob Iger said Reynolds' Wade Wilson/DP would be integrated with the Marvel Cinematic Universe MCU. This was despite those films being rated PG-13 and the Deadpool films being R-rated. Durr was willing to make R-rated Deadpool films as long as we let the audiences know what's coming, and said a Marvel brand could be created for characters like Deadpool. In May 2018, Reynolds said a third Deadpool film may not be made due to the shift of focus to X-Force. And his writing partner Paul Wernick said a third film would happen after Reynolds took a break from the character and the X-Force film was released. Similar to the MCU crossover film The Avengers 2012, being released between Iron Man 2 2010 and Iron Man 3 2013. The end of May 2018, Leitch expressed interest in returning for another Deadpool film, depending on the schedule. A third Deadpool film was believed to be in active development by that August, with production planned to take place in Atlanta, Georgia, rather than in Vancouver, Canada, where the previous films were made. Once Upon a Deadpool, a PG-13 version of Deadpool 2, was released at the end of the year. It was watched carefully by Disney and Marvel Studios to see how it might inform their approach to the character in the MCU. While promoting Once Upon a Deadpool, Reynolds confirmed that a third Deadpool film was in development, and said it would go in a completely different direction. Reynolds later revealed that they were considering a road trip film styled after Rashomon 1950 featuring Hugh Jackman's X-Men film. Series character Logan/Wolverine. Karen Sony, who portrayed Dopinder in the first two Deadpool films, reiterated these plans and explained that the film would have focused on Deadpool trying to save Christmas by going on a road trip to the North Pole. Jackman had himself envisioned a team-up film with Reynolds, inspired by 48 Hours, 1982, while attending a screening of Deadpool in 2016, but chose to retire from the role of Wolverine after Logan 2017. In March 2019, Disney officially acquired Fox and gained the film rights to several Marvel Comics characters for Marvel Studios, including Deadpool and the X-Men. The Marvel-based films that Fox had been developing were placed on hold. Josh Brolin, who portrayed Cable in Deadpool 2 and Thanos in the MCU, said in June 2019 that he had discussed his future as Cable with Marvel Studios. In October, even wokeness. Wolverine gets a few decent ones, too. Although, I kind of wish his humor was toned down a little, to contrast him better with Wade. It's not terrible or anything, and Hugh Jackman makes the lines sound natural, coming from Logan, but there are too many of them for too much of the film, which is an offshoot of the suppressed drama issue. The action is mostly good, although there's one big sequence later on that is very haphazardly filmed, which is confusing. Sean Levy acquits himself quite well in some of the fights, with one in the final act that looks terrific. But this one, which is a big deal considering who is involved, is confusing and poorly edited in the beginning. It gets better, but it isn't what it should have been. What is great are the many fights between the title characters, which look good and are as hilarious as you'd expect. Fights between two guys who can't kill each other and use lethal weapons would be. Deadpool and Wolverine isn't what it should be, and it isn't nearly what I hoped it would be, but it's still a great time in the moment. It's definitely worth a watch, and it's got plenty of laughs and fun, plus some good acting from Hugh Jackman when he's finally allowed to emote. Although I'm not sure how it'll play on repeat viewings once all the surprises are no longer surprises. It's essentially the skin on fried chicken. It tastes great when you crunch into it, but you need the meat to fill you up. Other information about this film, Deadpool and Wolverine, exists because Hugh Jackman, who has played Wolverine 9 times and had supposedly retired the character after 2017's Logan, loved the Deadpool series and was friends with star Ryan Reynolds. He wanted the mutant with the adamantium claws to team up with a merc with a mouth, preferably in a buddy movie modeled partly on R-rated 1980s action flicks like 48 Hours. The end product is true to the spirit of the franchise while pushing its self-aware humor and fourth wall breaks until it all seems like the result of a dare. How big can we make the air quotes around sincerity while still tugging on heartstrings? About half an hour into the movie, Wade gets sent on a multiverse-spanning mission that ends up teaming him with Wolverine. Never mind the reasons. You'll learn them anyway when you see the movie, which will make $1 billion no matter what somebody like me has to say about it. And the duo ends up traversing a prison-like void ruled by Cassandra Nova and Corwin, a bald, skeletal, slender twin sister of Charles Xavier. The place is filled with debris and monuments, all seemingly drawn from films released by Disney and 20th Century Fox, which was swallowed by Disney in 2019. I'm sure there'll be a comprehensive bullet-pointed list of cameos on the film's Wikipedia page by the time you read this, but among other things, I believe I spotted a SHIELD helicarrier, the spires of the Williamsburg Bridge, site of an important Spider-Man battle, and the top of the Statue of Liberty's torch. The original 1968 Planet of the Apes was a Fox production, all buried in the ground like the two vast and legless trunks of stone. In Percy Bysshe Shell's poem, Ozymandias, this zone is referred to as a metaphorical junkyard. The phrase can be read two ways. I suspect Deadpool's arched eyebrow playfulness inclines it toward the second reading, a dumping ground for pop culture metaphors, especially the kind you encounter in comic books and movies based on them. The metaphors in this junkyard include comic book characters who, in addition to being themselves, are walking representations of aspects of society, psychology, or a political or social condition. They're also products Not for nothing does the first Deadpool Wolverine fight happen around a giant stone-carved version of the 20th Century Fox logo that used to appear in front of Fox movies. A studio had to be sacrificed for this film to exist. Cinema history obsessives who can tolerate Ryan Reynolds mugging and pratfalling and verbal footnoting will appreciate that among other things Deadpool and Wolverine is a superhero version of a memorial service for a studio and the various franchises and undeveloped projects that were discarded or decommissioned when it was bought. Lazarus-styled IP tributes are handled with more wit and humor, not to mention basic decency here than the AI whirlwind of rubber-faced DC characters trotted out. In Warner Brothers' The Flash, the movie's re-awareness of the profit motive takes a bit of the sting out as, well, Fox killed him, Wade says of Logan. Disney brought him back. They're going to make him do this till he's 90. Also, not for nothing, the movie's main story is about literal as well as figurative resurrections. When we meet Wade for the first time in 6 years, he's been kicked to the curb by his girlfriend Vanessa Morena Bacon and rejected by the Avengers and has resigned himself to being a loser and is now selling used cars and wearing a bad hairpiece. He gets roped into service by Mr. Paradox, Matthew McFadden, an agent for the Time Variance Authority, TVA, who has developed a time ripper that can mercy kill timelines that have lost their anchor being. Again, there's no point getting deep in the plot weeds in a review of a film like this. So, let's say that to head off apocalyptic problems in WDE's own timeline, he has to capture a Wolverine from one of the other timelines and replace him in the one where he was a tragically deceased anchor being holding that strand together. In service of all the tomfoolery and shenanigans that ensue, the movie turns subtext into text and boldfaces it. Wade revels in declaring himself a timeline Jesus. In one timeline jumping mission, we see Logan crucified on a giant X. The movie incrementally becomes the 9-figure budgeted superhero action movie equivalent of a Chuck Jones-directed Looney Tunes touchstone like Duck-Amuck. Keep going, Wade says. When a character starts monologuing, audiences are accustomed to long run times. Wade narrates the entire thing, as he always does, and at one point seizes the camera and drags it into another part of the set to tell us something confidential. The script is upfront about what Disney wouldn't allow Reynolds and company to. So, cocaine is prominently mentioned, but nobody does any, but stuff is described, but not depicted. There's homoerotic horseplay and wordplay, but no actual sexual person play. That being said, the writers get more latitude than I assumed they get when it comes to criticisms of Disney running the MCU into the ground and off in multiple incompatible directions post-Endgame. Welcome to the MCU, by the way, Wade tells Logan, you're joining at a low point. At the same time, the film maintains the loose verging on chaotic sketch comedy-derived sensibility that links it to slapstick from the early sound era of motion pictures. Wolverine and Logan are 9 vulnerable cousins of Bob Hope and Bing Crosby riffing their way through the Lawn Gunning Road series, which regularly pause to bond with the audience over watching a movie. They're also Mo and Curly in supersuits. Their eye pokes go through the sockets and into the brain. Somehow, despite the silly mayhem and hyper-meta goofing, I kind of did care about the characters, especially in the finale, which Unspotho's fire hose and blasts us with. Jackman is moving as Wolverine and always has been, arguably more so the older he gets. Here he plays not the straight man, but the exasperated, cranky man. He yells, not just because he's had enough of this red-suited clown, but also because he's furious at himself for failing and now has a target at which to direct his accumulated negative energy. Reynolds, for all his blabbermouthed, abrasive relentlessness, is touching as well, probably because in this version of the character stories, they're both broken, abandoned men, losers, Wade calls them. Their loserness connects to the idea of the Fox Marvel characters ending up collateral damage in a long-running corporate rivalry that concluded with one combatant annexing and pillaging the other. I wish the movie were more coherent and consistent. The visual effects are of variable quality. Some of the close-ups are luminous and the colors radiant, particularly in night scenes, while other shots, particularly daylight panoramas in the limbo sequence, are so flat-looking and washed out and devoid of detail that they wouldn't pass as a screensaver. Director Shah Levy, a regular Reynolds collaborator who's comfortable with CG-driven big-budget projects, handles the action competently, but without jaw-on-the-floor inventiveness. Though he does have a comedy storyteller's knack for timing the verbal and visual gags. And there's a nifty old boy tribute. This is the second Deadpool in a row where Wade is driven mainly by a desire to do right by Vanessa, even though she's barely in it. His narration does, however, confess to getting a stiffy while watching Gossip Girl, which starred Reynolds' wife Blake Lively. The movie is tight by superhero standards, 127 minutes, but still runs out of gas. Wade admits it though, promising to wrap things up when you start to fidget. There are compensations, particularly in the casting. McFeeden serves tasty ham in the Shakespeare-trained Brit tradition. Corin, who played Princess Diana in Netflix's The Crown, makes a frightening villain with her predatory stare, bird-boned arms and legs, and long, elegant fingers. The movie pushes some of Cassandra's torturous or murderous acts to the point where they seem like spiritual as well as physical violations. When this woman gets in your head, it's not a metaphor. Between the profanity, the gore, and the sadomasochistic bent, this entry is as not for kids as the others. In its sketch comedy-adjacent way, there are 5 credited writers, Deadpool and Wolverine, articulate something honest and true about the essence of comic book movies, more so than most grim dark adaptations. It's all a riff anyway. Multiverse storytelling, like the comic book, soap opera, and pro-wrestling tropes it evolved from, is infinitely malleable. No important character is irrevocably dead, nor are they locked into being exclusively a good or bad guy. That's why big-name characters can be introduced with fanfare, then killed suddenly for a laugh, or flipped from irredeemably evil to evil, but redeemable. We go in knowing our suspension of disbelief will be flicked off and on like a light switch. This is part of the pact and the dare point. 30 years ago, X-Men comic books were in their 90s heyday, ostensibly saving Marvel Comics from their lean years. Fox Kids X-Men, the animated series, was a huge hit, and X-Men action figures by Toy Biz sold like hotcakes. I was the nerd, then an unpopular thing to be, who invested untold dollars in back issues and filling out my collection. I woke up every Saturday to record the cartoon on my own VHS tape for my collection, sans commercials, and my action figure stockpile was ever growing. The preteen version of me couldn't imagine that two of my favorite characters, Wolverine and Deadpool, would ever have their own mega-budget Hollywood movie team-up. But here we are in 2024 after a dozen or so X-Men movies, and the impossible dream of Deadpool and Wolverine is a reality. But instead of being just a glorious ode to the merc with a mouth and the knuckle head, which it is, it's also about Disney and its corporate acquisition of 20th Century Fox. And while the movie is somehow a feature-length get to everything Fox got wrong about their various 2000s-era Marvel series X-Men, Fantastic Four, Daredevil et al., it's also a vital rush to counter everything the MCU has mishandled in the post-codal deflation of Avengers Endgame 2019. To be sure, after Endgame, the MCU has floundered. I've enjoyed, often with a passive shrug, many of these movies, but I've also had enough superhero multiverse and character variants to last a lifetime. Alas, Deadpool and Wolverine isn't a back-to-basics effort. So, what can I tell you about the story? Not much. Out of respect for other viewers, critics have been instructed not to reveal plot details, cameos, or the like. What does that leave? Again, not much. The movie's engine runs on surprise appearances, delightfully base verbal and visual humor, and the occasional shocking twist. As you might expect, the fate of the universe hangs in the balance, and only these anti-heroes can save it. But it's not just the universe, it's the multiverse. That means anyone from any superhero movie might appear, prompting nerds like me to laugh riotously with recognition and disbelief. It may as well be called into the Deadpool-verse given all the alternate versions and Easter eggs. dropped into this one 30-minute payoff for viewers who have been watching superhero movies since long before the MCU. Ryan Reynolds reprises his quippy pansexual ultra-violent yet somehow sweetheart role from Deadpool 2016 and Deadpool 2 2018, once again occupying the smarmy and quick-witted screen persona he established in Van Wilder 2002 and has maintained ever since. Armed to the teeth, his horribly scarred character not only breaks the fourth wall, but knows he's in a movie and played by Reynolds, allowing for riotous in-jokes about the actor's life and career. Same is true of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, real name Logan. Although Wolvie had a fitting end in 2017's slogan, "The multiverse means limitless Logans exist in other timelines," we glimpse them in a montage featuring several iterations of Wolverines from the comics. My favorite sequence from the movie, even if the montage lasts mere seconds. Here, Deadpool/Reynolds has a bromance with Logan/Jackman, and the four identities intermingle freely, with the latter, a straight man, to the decidedly not straight former Deadpool and Wolverines. Still, you would have had to watch dozens of movies and Disney Plus series to understand everything happening. The plot concerns the Time Variance Authority, TVA, an organization that polices multiverse timelines, and a TVA functionary named Mr. Paradox, played by Succession's Matthew McFadden, trying to overstep his bounds. To save his timeline, Deadpool enlists a defeated version of Logan for a mission that finds them facing off against Cassandra Nova, Emma Corrin, the high-powered mutant sister of Professor X. Some of the cast from the earlier Deadpool movies, Morena Baccarin, Brianna Hildebrand, Lizzie Uggams, Karen Sony, Rob Delaney reprise their roles on the sidelines. Fortunately, the story is secondary next to jokes about pegging, bodily orifices, and hardcore drugs. Director Sean Levy, Reynolds' pal from Free Guy and the Atom Project, and Jackman's pal from Real Steel, and his editing team zip from one sequence to the next. It feels like a 90-minute movie, and it's all propelled by Reynolds' energetic performance, Jackman's carriageanly attitude, and action sequences set to random pop music. The most engaging fights are the few long, brutal, bloody ones between the titular characters who ostensibly cannot die. Contrast, Levy loses visual cohesion in larger group battles that often register as chaos. To his credit, MCU overseer Kevin Feige has given the five credited screenwriters Reynolds, Levy, Rhett Ree, and Paul Werner-Nick, writers of the earlier Deadpool installments, and longtime comic writer Zeb Wells, incredible freedom. They deliver the first R-rated entry in the MCU with more and gory violence than Disney probably feels comfortable with, and Reynolds clearly delights in pushing their buttons. Jackman, too, looks like he's enjoying himself as an unleashed version of the character he started playing nearly a quarter-century ago. And finally, in his yellow costume, nothing about Deadpool and Wolverine feels held back or curbed. And no one, not even Feck himself, is safe from Deadpool's verbal wrath. More than once, I thought, I can't believe the studio allowed this. Or did they really just say that? Amusingly, Deadpool even mocks the post-Endgame downswing. And while Deadpool and Wolverine represents a highlight of Phase 5 after last year's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it's worth questioning whether anything to follow in the next year or so that will compare to its postmodern energy. And if this self-declared Marvel Jesus announces that the multiverse is dead, does that mean we will all be spared such nonsense in future MCU movies? I hope so. Deadpool and Wolverine is ridiculously fun while it lasts. I laughed harder than I have in a long time at some of the jokes, which even caused a few groans of offended sensibilities in my press screening. I consider that an admirable sign. When was the last time, if ever, an MCU movie had the potential to offend anyone? That said, I don't expect I'll want to revisit this movie again. To borrow a line used to describe Deadpool, the movie is an annoying one-trick pony, but I mean that in the most affectionate way. With the story secondary and the emotional beats mostly perfunctory, the movie's dependence on shock humor and surprise cameos won't by design be as effective the second time around. However, if viewers can remain unspoiled before seeing it, Deadpool and Wolverine has some wildly hilarious meta-humor, self-referential jokes, and rewards for devoted fans. I had a blast with these moments, though much like the two previous Deadpool features, their ability to leave a lasting impact is minor. Nevertheless, the movie tickled my nerdy parts just the right way, which seems to be the intent. More detailed. I went into Deadpool and Wolverine surprisingly optimistic. This is after all the only Marvel Studios feature due out this year. A res pit from superhero fatigue. This film is also a novelty in the Marvel URA, an R-rated comedy that bridges the gap between the 20th Century Fox X-Men franchise where Deadpool and Wolverine both started out and the ongoing MCU. But despite being right in the demographic crosshairs for its incessant geek culture references, I found myself as exhausted with this film as I have been with any other installment in the lackluster multiverse saga. Deadpool and Wolverine is every inch a post-peak Marvel movie. A parade of crowd-pleasing pops with practically no substance, guaranteeing a billion-dollar return and a shelf life of about 5 minutes. Deadpool and Wolverine doubles down on the metatextual gags of its predecessors, functioning as a swan song for the Disney-absorbed 20th Century Fox and their Marvel film franchises. Mr. Paradox of the Time Variance Authority, Matthew Mcfean, has determined that Deadpool/Wade Wilson's home universe has become obsolete, but offers him the chance to jump ship to the sacred timeline, the primary setting of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Instead, Wade attempts to save his own universe with the help of a time variant of Wolverine/Logan, Hugh Jackman. Their quest puts them at odds with godlike mutant Cassandra Nova, Emma Corrin, and a string of cast-offs from dead timelines. Much of the film's comedy presupposes the audience's familiarity not only with the entire Marvel screen canon going back 20 years, but with unmade projects, casting rumors, and fan discourse. At my preview screening, where roughly 30% of the audience was wearing some sort of Marvel merchandise, these jokes killed. Most of the pauses for applause were honored, and the crowd went wild for the predictable repetition of popular online memes. This genre of gag was also plentiful in the first two Deadpool films, but this installment significantly cranks up their frequency and importance. Heaven help anyone who watches this without having seen or at least read up about 18 other films or a nerdy friend next to them to explain all of these jokes. Don't worry, because if you're not a Marvel nerd, there are still 2 other joke premises in the movie repeated over and over and over again. One is Deadpool's famous potty mouth combined with his extravagant gender performance and hyperactive pansexuality, which Reynolds and company clearly find to be the funniest thing in the world. He's a man who undulates his hips when he walks and talks about receiving anal sex. The most hilarious kind of sex a person can enjoy. Isn't it shocking that Disney is allowing this? Waite certainly thinks so, and he'll bring it up as often as possible. Just in case this whole enterprise starts to feel too gay to any of the edgelord redditors in the audience, here comes an annoying soft boy variant of Deadpool who identifies as a feminist and a joke about how another joke will upset the woke mob. The film's third and final comedy premise is that moments of drama or over-the-top violence are funny when set against kitschy and familiar pop songs. Let's kill a bunch of guys to buy. Bye-bye. Let's kill a bunch of guys to like a virgin. See, the juxtaposition of the bloodbath and the bouncy beat is ironic. 1 or 2 of these violent music videos can be funny. They certainly worked in the first Deadpool. But Deadpool and Wolverine employs this device for practically every action sequence, including consequential ones, sucking all the drama out of potentially impactful moments. The music is also forced to do most of the heavy lifting as the action itself is often dizzying and incoherent, particularly during crowded team versus team battles. If there's a saving grace to Deadpool and Wolverine, it's Hugh Jackman, who is totally engrossing during his handful of acting moments. Here, playing a drunk, self-hating version of Logan from a universe where he failed all of his friends, Jackman strikes a solid balance between comedic straight man and affecting dramatic foil. It's not a reprise of his performance from Logan. Nor should it be, but it's totally dialed in, undercut only by the storyteller's assumption that we will continue to find it funny or shocking when he uses the word. It is, of course, thrilling to see Jackman don the classic yellow and blue costume that the Fox movies never saw fit to provide. And to the credit of the film's 5 writers, Logan's colorful, comics-accurate wardrobe is given some narrative weight, a symbolic meaning for the character that goes beyond fanservice. It is in fact possible to deliver nostalgic nuggets for the nerds and tell a compelling story. And Marvel has pulled it off on a few occasions. This time around, however, practically every little treat for the audience feels like just that, a Scooby snack, tossed into a waiting mouth as a reward for loyal adherence to the Marvel brand. There was one moment in Deadpool and Wolverine that made me genuinely emotional. Over the closing credits, there's a montage of highlights and behind-the-scenes footage from various 20th Century Fox Marvel movies. Not just the well-liked ones, but total flops, like Josh Tran's Fantastic Four. This button underlines a theme that the film's narrative fumbles. That whether or not a movie or character accounts, it still matters to someone. These films, even the bad ones, were the product of years of hard work by thousands of people. It's sweet to give that work a curtain call. Deadpool and Wolverine opens up with Deadpool himself explaining that superheroes with regenerative powers can't die, that they can come back from everything with the right motivation. Then proceeds to pull out the corpse of Wolverine from Logan. No longer alive and far from coming back, but this hero skeleton is still useful to Deadpool. He can use every piece for extreme violence filled with digital blood that looks worse than strawberry jelly, or for violence that ends up becoming a crude sex joke that my friends might have made 5 or 6 years ago. Deadpool will never hide what he or this film is. The opening scene, set to * and wins hit by Bye Bye, is the thesis statement for the film and the current state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm not sure there is a healing factor that can bring back any of this to the level of excitement it once had, but they sure will use every bone to milk the same stuff we're used to until we finally leave the room. Deadpool and Wolverine isn't an awful movie by any means. Still, with the 5 writers on the film, Ryan Reynolds, Rhett Ree, Paul Wernick, Zeb Wells, and Shaw Levy, the film never feels like it has anything to say more than, man, superhero movies are exhausting, right? This one very much is trying to have its cake and eat it too by having Deadpool goof his way to saving the whole world. This time around, and feeling like he means more than just being a bounty hunter and then the worst Wolverine, redeeming himself by saving a world he destroyed before. However, Deadpool never seems to grow an inch within himself, making the self-sacrifice feel like just one more gag in the book. Wolverine's tragic history is not shown much at all, but only explained via dialogue and a wonderful performance by Hugh Jackman, who has played this role since the first X-Men film. There is not much an audience member can sink their teeth into that isn't just the fat on a thin piece of steak. The movie tries to garner sympathy or weaponize nostalgia with the cameos of what was or what could have been. I will not spoil any of these here for the sake of civility, but for a long-time comic book and just movie fan myself, these felt like dirt being kicked in my eye. These were parodies and cheap gags from these films. 1, maybe 2, worked all right within the context of the film, but most reminded me of a better time with movies with a bit more flair or a bit more of an original personality. Even if these movies were not the highest art, they stood out from the other films of their ilk. Shawn Levy, the director, can't seem to find a look that makes this film fit within either the Deadpool movies that came before or the MCU that the movie is falling within. It lands in the middle, making everything look bland, sterile, and staged. Which, for some reason, the movie draws attention to the inferiority of the look by comparing itself to other films with excellent art, direction, and style. Mad Max, for one. Levy also can't compete with the directors that came before within this franchise. Tim Miller and David Leitch, coming from visual effects backgrounds, knew how to form a scene with characters who weren't real. They knew how to shoot action that was completely unnatural and still bring it to a sense of reality. There is a moment with Wolverine masked up leaps from a bus For some reason, they felt the need to fully make him CGI in the scene. As he stands next to Deadpool, he looks more like the animation in a character selection screen in a fighting game than a real human. That is the key flaw of the whole movie. It feels like it's missing a soul. That the human element of the movie is so diminished by giving what the fans want that it ends with no real point to it. It's flashy, bloody, comic, accurate, and has more jokes per minute than a lot of comedies right now, but it doesn't feel like there was much thought given to any of it. When the movie ended and I checked my phone, I was hit with the announcement of RDJ joining the MCU. Again as Victor Von Doom. Doom is maybe the biggest Marvel villain played by an actor who was the soul of the original MCU. This is on top of the announcement that he will be directed by the Russo brothers, the ones who closed that Bye-bye. Let's kill a bunch of guys to like a virgin. See, the juxtaposition of the bloodbath and the bouncy beat is ironic. One or two of these violent music videos can be funny. They certainly worked in the first Deadpool. But Deadpool and Wolverine employs this device for practically every action sequence, including consequential ones, sucking all the drama out of potentially impactful moments. The music is also forced to do most of the heavy lifting as the action itself is often dizzying and incoherent, particularly during crowded team versus team battles. If there's a saving grace to Deadpool and Wolverine, it's Hugh Jackman, who is totally engrossing during his handful of acting moments. Here, playing a drunk, self-hating version of Logan from a universe where he failed all of his friends, Jackman strikes a solid balance between comedic straight man and affecting dramatic foil. It's not a reprise of his performance from Logan. Nor should it be, but it's totally dialed in, undercut only by the storyteller's assumption that we will continue to find it funny or shocking when he uses the word. It is, of course, thrilling to see Jackman don the classic yellow and blue costume that the Fox movies never saw fit to provide. And to the credit of the film's 5 writers, Logan's colorful, comics-accurate wardrobe is given some narrative weight, a symbolic meaning for the character that goes beyond fanservice. It is in fact possible to deliver nostalgic nuggets for the nerds and tell a compelling story. And Marvel has pulled it off on a few occasions. This time around, however, practically every little treat for the audience feels like just that, a Scooby snack, tossed into a waiting mouth as a reward for loyal adherence to the Marvel brand. There was one moment in Deadpool and Wolverine that made me genuinely emotional. Over the closing credits, there's a montage of highlights and behind-the-scenes footage from various 20th Century Fox Marvel movies. Not just the well-liked ones, but total flops, like Josh Tran's Fantastic Four. This button underlines a theme that the film's narrative fumbles. That whether or not a movie or character accounts, it still matters to someone. These films, even the bad ones, were the product of years of hard work by thousands of people. It's sweet to give that work a curtain call. Deadpool and Wolverine opens up with Deadpool himself explaining that superheroes with regenerative powers can't die, that they can come back from everything with the right motivation. Then proceeds to pull out the corpse of Wolverine from Logan. No longer alive and far from coming back, but this hero skeleton is still useful to Deadpool. He can use every piece for extreme violence filled with digital blood that looks worse than strawberry jelly, or for violence that ends up becoming a crude sex joke that my friends might have made 5 or 6 years ago. Deadpool will never hide what he or this film is. The opening scene, set to *N wins hit by Bye Bye, is the thesis statement for the film and the current state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm not sure there is a healing factor that can bring back any of this to the level of excitement it once had, but they sure will use every bone to milk the same stuff we're used to until we finally leave the room. Deadpool and Wolverine isn't an awful movie by any means. Still, with the 5 writers on the film, Ryan Reynolds, Rhett Ree, Paul Wernick, Zeb Wells, and Shaw Levy, the film never feels like it has anything to say more than, man, superhero movies are exhausting, right? This one very much is trying to have its cake and eat it too by having Deadpool goof his way to saving the whole world. This time around and feeling like he means more than just being a bounty hunter and then the worst Wolverine. redeeming himself by saving a world he destroyed before. However, Deadpool never seems to grow an inch within himself, making the self-sacrifice feel like just one more gag in the book. Wolverine's tragic history is not shown much at all, but only explained via dialogue and a wonderful performance by Hugh Jackman, who has played this role. Since the first X-Men film, there is not much an audience member can sink their teeth into that isn't just the fat on a thin piece of steak. The movie tries to garner sympathy or weaponize nostalgia with the cameos of what was or what could have been. I will not spoil any of these here for the sake of civility, but for a long-time comic book and just movie fan myself, these felt like dirt being kicked in my eye. These were parodies and cheap gags from these films. One, maybe two, worked all right within the context of the film, but most reminded me of a better time with movies with a bit more flair or a bit more of an original personality. Even if these movies were not the highest art, they stood out from the other films of their ilk. Shawn Levy, the director, can't seem to find a look that makes this film fit within either the Deadpool movies that came before or the MCU that the movie is falling within. It lands in the middle, making everything look bland, sterile, and staged. Which, for some reason, the movie draws attention to the inferiority of the look by comparing itself to other films with excellent art, direction, and style. Mad Max, for one. Levy also can't compete with the directors that came before within this franchise. Tim Miller and David Leitch, coming from visual effects backgrounds, knew how to form a scene with characters who weren't real. They knew how to shoot action that was completely unnatural and still bring it to a sense of reality. There is a moment with Wolverine masked up leaps from a bus. For some reason, they felt the need to fully make him CGI in the scene. As he stands next to Deadpool, he looks more like the animation in a character selection screen in a fighting game than a real human. That is the key flaw of the whole movie. It feels like it's missing a soul. That the human element of the movie is so diminished by giving what the fans want that it ends with no real point to it. It's flashy, bloody, comic, accurate, and has more jokes per minute than a lot of comedies right now, but it doesn't feel like there was much thought given to any of it. When the movie ended and I checked my phone, I was hit with the announcement of RDJ joining the MCU. Again as Victor Von Doom. Doom is maybe the biggest Marvel villain played by an actor who was the soul of the original MCU. This is on top of the announcement that he will be directed by the Russo brothers, the ones who closed that chapter with him in it. Ones that tried to do their own thing, but each iteration of film they made after felt more soulless than the next. It's hard to have much hope for the future of these films, which is a bummer for me. Do believe they can be amazing blockbusters and even occasionally really wonderful films. I could go through this movie piece by piece, breaking down the moments I did enjoy and the moments that drove me mad, but it would end up just being jurors in review form. Ryan Reynolds, who I can't believe I haven't mentioned until this moment, said in his interview on the show Hot Ones, promoting this film that the story in the film has to matter to get the audience to buy in, that they're desensitized to spectacle. It seems that he thought this is what they were doing in this film, but being confused with nostalgia, fourth wall breaking, and the formula that seemed to work before does not add up to the story. It adds up to spectacle. Is Deadpool and Wolverine the worst in the superhero genre? Not really. Everyone I saw it with had a blast. I had a few laughs and saw some cool stuff. The movie is just a case study for the current state of it all, and it doesn't fill me with much hope or excitement. This film directed by Shawn Levy, written by Ryan Reynolds, Paul Warenick, Zeb Wells. Shawn Levy produced by Kevin Feck, Lauren Schuler. Donner Ryan Reynolds. Shawn Levy starring Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, Emma Corrin, Marina Bacon, Rob Delaney, Lizzie Uggams, Aaron Stanford, Matthew McFadyen. Cinematography George Richmond, edited by Dean Zimmerman, Shin. Music by Rob Simpson. Production companies, Marvel Studios, Maximum Effort, 21 Laps. Entertainment. Distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. Release dates July 22, 2024 in David H. Co. Theater. July 26, 2024 in United States. Running time 128 minutes. United States. Language, English. Budget $200 million. Box office $1.338 billion. So friends, this is the detailed review of the film Deadpool and Wolverine and some interesting facts about this film. Please like, share, and subscribe.